Hello Internet, and welcome to the Collective Arcana. We're a channel all about tabletop gaming, and today we're going to start our series on the Pathfinder Second Edition classes from the core rulebook. And why not start in alphabetical order? So we're going to begin with the Alchemist. So the Alchemist is sort of a jack-of-all-trades character. It can do a really good job of filling multiple roles, multiple gaps in a party, but it doesn't really shine on its own as hard as some of the other classes can. It doesn't really have a niche that it outperforms at. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. We're going to start with the base proficiencies, everything you get at first level, and then we're going to talk about as they progress as well. Alchemists gain 8 hit points per level, and their boosted stat is Intelligence. This is their preferred stat because it's going to allow them to be more proficient with crafting, which is really their bread and butter, and has a nice side effect of meaning that even though they begin trained with crafting and 3 other skills of their choice, they also get a number of skills equal to their intelligence modifier, which makes them great skill monkeys for your party. Alchemists begin trained in perception at level 1 and will not advance until level 9, after which point their proficiency level will not increase. That doesn't mean that you cap at 9, because of course you always add your level to your proficiency bonus, but it is worth noting that it's definitely not one of the most perceptive classes and won't always be going first on initiative. For saving throws, Alchemists begin as experts in Fortitude, and that will go up to Master at level 11 and cap there. They also begin as experts in Reflex saves, and that will also progress to Master, but at level 15. As far as will saves, they begin trained and will only advance to Expert at level 7. For attacks, the Alchemist is trained in simple weapons, as well as unarmed and alchemical weapons. Now, our alchemical bombs specifically. Those are a little different than other thrown weapons, and they have some unique traits. The main thing there is just that it's considered sort of an advanced proficiency that they get by default. Now, at level 7, they will advance to Expert. The interesting thing here is they will not advance in all those. Their unarmed stops at Trained, and only simple and alchemical bombs proficiencies progress to Expert. Also strange is that's where their proficiency bonus to attacks end. They never get above Expert, although they do get some specialization options. This is fairly weird for a class where 2 of its 3 subclasses available in the book are both offensive based, that being the Bomber and the Mutagenist. So it can be a little bit odd, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the end, but there's some things that will offset that, but it's definitely worth noting with the class. Defensively, the Alchemist begins trained in unarmored and light armor, and will progress to Expert at level 13 and Master at level 19. So a little behind the curve, but by level 20 they're going to be just about as good as anybody. In addition to the skills we talked about earlier, that's crafting as a given, plus 3 additional, plus your intelligence modifier. You're also going to be trained in a class DC at level 1. This is another strange one because while many classes have a class DC, the Alchemist only uses their class DC by the book out of the gate here if you take a couple of feats that are completely optional. It's there primarily as a future-proofing or for people that take those 2 feats, and those would be Powerful Alchemy and Potent Poisoner. So if you're not expecting to use any of those, you can completely disregard that class DC. That doesn't mean that it will never be useful. Most likely, as I said, this is future-proofing. We can, I imagine, expect to see something in the Advanced Player's Guide that's going to, at least widen the applications of that class DC. So Alchemy is, of course, the bread and butter of the Alchemist class, and they will start you off with 8 total formulas known. And so formulas are, there's 24 first-level formulas in the book. You'll get 4 from your Alchemy specialty crafting feat that it comes free as part of the class. You'll gain 2 as part of an alchemical book that you just get to have as part of your character at first level. and you'll gain 2 based on your choice of subclass or research fields. In addition to these 8 formulas and your ability to craft those formulas just like anyone else can craft, as an alchemist you have an edge called Advanced Alchemy, and that plays on these things called infused reagents. So the reagents are basically like your ingredients, and every day you get to infuse or put some sort of power into otherwise mundane ingredients, and use those ingredients to craft concoctions at the beginning of your day as part of your daily preparations that do not have to submit to the normal rules of cost in terms of gold or time. So, whereas normally it might take you several days to craft a few batches of potions, up to several weeks to craft multiple batches, every morning you get guaranteed, as long as you have access to your alchemical tools or laboratory, you're going to be able to start with a number of ingredients equal to your character level plus your intelligence modifier. And so for each of those infused reagents, you can create 1 concoction. And so you can have a pretty wide array of alchemical items, even if you haven't had a lot of downtime in a while. Of course, having downtime, all the better, because you can have all these as long as you want. Now, those infused reagents are a little different than normal alchemy, which stays good for a long time, as I said. The infused reagents are only good that day, and you can do 2 things with them. You can craft, in the morning, like I said, or you have something throughout the day. You can save some of those reagents as part of your prep process, leave a few aside, and then throughout your day you can do something called quick alchemy. It takes a single action, you have to have access to your tools again, but you can actually throw together a potion on the fly to use right then. And you have to use it right then, because unlike your potions you make in the beginning of the day that are good until you make preparations again, these are only good until the beginning of your next turn. Of course, there are feats to extend that and make that a little better, but just that's sort of the drawback. It's sort of this walking this line between a prepared caster and a spontaneous caster that really can allow an alchemist in the right moments to be very clutch. If you realize that there's a weakness on an enemy, or you realize that you just didn't bring something to the table today, that's not necessarily a problem. There's no finality to that as long as you have some leftover reagents. The flip side is that you have to use them right then. So if something were to change, then like in the middle of your turn, for example, you have to use an interact action to throw a bomb. Any number of things could happen that could cause an interrupt to that action, and that means that you potentially are losing that reagent completely. So it's a give and take. And the other flip side is, and one of the big advantages as a support class versus, say, a traditional caster, is the alchemist at the beginning of the day can give buffs and potions and elixirs and things to the party every day, so that the alchemist in battle or in a clutch moment doesn't have to spend his own or her own actions to buff the party, but rather can rely on the party to police their buffs themselves or their healing themselves to a degree. But if you're relying completely on quick alchemy, that's out the window, because you got to do it all right then. So the Alchemist right now has 3 subclasses. The Advanced Player's Guide will most likely add another, or at least expand on some other options, I'm sure. Hopefully another one, just for fun. But you have the Bomber, and they excel in creating explosives and incendiary devices. Those would include pretty much all of the basic elements: electricity, fire, acid. All the things that all the different types of damage you're going to be looking for with spells. There's an alchemical version. What's cool, a lot of people are going to know Alchemist Fire and things like that. What's cool is that in addition to flat damage and in a nice single target with a little bit of splash damage to the side, is they have persistent damage or other lasting effects. So having a pretty reliable way to get persistent damage or other debuffs is very cool. It's really the big strength of the class. In addition to something like Quick Alchemy being able to play into a weakness you just discovered mid-fight, the fact that you can also potentially cause enemies to be flat-footed just because you landed a ranged, attack with your bomb. That's a very big deal to a party, especially when fighting more powerful enemies. As your bomber research field advances, you're going to be able to create, basically for free, some of the weaker versions of some of your explosives, which may not sound that exciting, but if the idea is you're trying to make sure that you've got the tools you need in case you run into something that's very weak to, say, electricity damage or acid damage, it's a great way to make sure that you have several options in the tank, because sometimes, a few extra dice might be nice, for the higher level potion, but if something's got a weakness of, say, 5, 10, or 15, that makes up for it being a few dice weaker than your best possible option, to just have a few freebies sitting around the lower levels. So definitely not as bad as it may sound, given that they have to be the lesser and then the moderate. But so don't sleep on those options, because I've seen running my games so far, weakness in this game is a very big deal, and sometimes it is the best and most surefire way to make sure you're killing something is to make sure you're hitting it with the right kind of damage. And fights can go very differently if you don't have that option. The second of the research fields is the chirurgeon. That's the word, chirurgeon. To help you, if it looks strange on paper, it sort of rhymes with surgeon. I think it's supposed to. I'm really not sure. But it is a healer support focused role subclass within the Alchemist. It's going to get access to, it's going to learn some free elixirs at low level, and it's going to be able to craft anti-plague and antidotes for functionally free as it advances. And by level 13, you're going to be able to, anytime you use quick alchemy to make an elixir of life healing potion, that's the healing potion that alchemists get, the healing is maximized, which means you don't roll dice. It's just, if it would be 4d6, it's just 24 healing plus whatever I think you get a small bonus of 4 maybe. So that's a big deal. That's pretty strong. Is it as good as a cleric? No, definitely not. The healing font is a very big thing, but it is pretty effective in terms of not having something ready to go and then suddenly having something ready to go. But the reality is, as a chirurgeon, you probably are going to have a lot of healing potions already. But this really allows you to be more versatile throughout your day by getting more effect when you are creating your healing potions on the fly. The third subclass for Alchemist in the core book is the Mutagenist, and the Mutagenist is very much the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde sort of character, though not necessarily always buffing just physical stats and abilities, sometimes mental as well, silver-tongued, for example. But it's really about buffing yourself and giving yourself edges on skill checks and in combat and things like that. Think of it as, just a nice group of buffs, but they do have drawbacks. So it's sort of like a big varied list of unique and quirky barbarian rages that you can sort of go into. Again, with very eclectic buffs and debuffs attached to them. What's cool there is you can eventually get some of those lesser buffs free with your research field. You can also gain an ability. This is from the errata. This wasn't in the core rulebook. This was added later, where what had happened was in the first printing, there was an obsolete benefit that doesn't really apply the way that the final rules shook out. Something left over from the playtest, I believe. And so when they realized it didn't do anything, they quickly, with the first batch of errata, they added, and it's mutagenic flashback. And what that allows you to do is any of your mutagens you've used throughout your day, you can pick one of them, and without having to, this is a free action, you can only do it once per day, but without having to spend any of your actions right then, you can come under the effects of that mutagen again for a full minute. That's pretty strong and pretty cool. and it's definitely something that can get you out of a jam. The big ticket thing with the mutagenist path is you can eventually have the ability to be under the effects of 2 mutagens at once. Normally, if you're already under the effects of a mutagen and you take a mutagen, it will force the other one out. Now you can have 2 of them active at once. And that is pretty strong, to say the least. I don't believe that you can stack 2 of the same mutagen, but, you can get 1 for mobility and 1 for, strength, so that you can really become a pretty mobile skirmisher, if you want it to be. And that's really where the Trojan is sort of designed to be, is sort of this off tank. You get to be the rogue sort of skill monkey character, and then when a fight breaks out, you can actually move to the front lines and be relatively effective. As we've said before, because your attacks are not that high, they'll never get past expert, and because your defenses, while they do go all the way up to master, they do it a bit slower than most frontline characters. That may not always be the best option to run in and be the bruiser, and so your mileage definitely may vary on that. But it's very much like the barbarian, again, where you have this, and barbarian is next, but the barbarian is very much a class that is sort of a physical glass cannon. They look like they're really tough. They've got all this HP, they've got really good fortitude saves, they get damage reduction and temporary HP, but they need all of that because their AC is so bad, they're likely going to take those hits. So, and they're definitely not one of the more accurate attackers either. So, the Alchemist, the mutagenist Alchemist, is really sort of aiming for that niche as well. The difference is that when a barbarian's not in rage, he's just a worse fighter. When the Alchemist is, when the mutagenist is not under a mutagen, he's just a worse rogue. So, but again, you have the versatility there where you can also still have those bombs and things like that. So, again, and this is going to be a theme, the Alchemist is very much that jack of all trades, master of none sort of character. So what sorts of things can you make with alchemy beyond the elixirs and the bombs and the mutagens? Well, right now there's really only tools. You can make things like sticky glue, stuff like that. Some sort of pseudo trap type items, I suppose, as well as poisons. We do expect to see some expansions in what's available, but even right now there's probably over 100 that are available. So it's a pretty wide range of things that you can make. Everything from removing status effects to buffing yourself or allies, healing allies, debuffing enemies, and of course, the wonderful explosives. That really just leaves us with the feats for the Alchemist. And the feats are relatively varied. You have options called additives, which function very much like meta magic, in that you can apply them to alchemy that you're throwing together with your quick alchemy to add an additional effect, like maybe so that your explosive or your bomb, in addition to doing its elemental damage, it also creates a smoke cloud, great for escapes or just preventing enemies from making ranged attacks. In addition, there are things where you can mix like 2 elixirs so that you can give an ally a really good healing and maybe remove disease sort of thing. And that's really cool. That's a wonderful option there. And it's really kind of needed because whereas a spellcaster, your spells really are always getting new. You're always getting new and exciting and strange ways to use spells. With an alchemist, you're functionally, with a few exceptions, you're functionally really just heightening the same spells as your level increases. And that's something, if you're new to the system, once we get a caster video up, that'll make a little more sense when I talk about heightening and things like that. But so it's nice that you have those options there, and there's some other feats as well that will boost some that aren't considered additives. But it would have been kind of nice, and hopefully as more come out with the Advanced Player's Guide, more options to for alchemical crafting come out, more formulas. Because it doesn't always feel great to use a feat to do something that you feel like is just keeping up with what another base class can do without the feat. So I'm a little iffy there on how I feel about that. As far as actual in battle, I mean, they're great. You're going to love using them. But, you don't want to see a feat tax, especially Pathfinder Second Edition has done a really good job of moving away from feat taxes. So it's a little strange how prevalent they are in the Alchemist. In addition to those additives, you have options to do some weird stuff like gain a familiar, improve like poison resistance, up to and including replicating actual magical potions that would normally require magical crafting and access to spells, as well as the ability to raise the dead. So a lot of great feats in there for the Alchemist. You can really hone in on the type of play that appeals to you, which is one of the good things about the class is it's extremely versatile. And you can, and some of the other abilities you have will prolong certain alchemical effects that you have in place. So you can really, if you have a play style or something that you found your party really needs, you can really double down on a lot of those things, which is, what you want to see with feats. So overall, let's talk pros and cons and the overview on the Alchemist. I do want to start by saying that in my experience so far, I'm pretty down on the Alchemist here after doing this video. I haven't played one myself yet, but I have, in reading through the Alchemist, I have seen a whole lot of things that maybe sort of scratch my head design-wise, but I will say that I am a player actually in a party. And to be fair, it's a party where we have no casters, we just have an Alchemist. But the Alchemist feels like a superhero compared to us. We're all martial characters, and part of the setting and the flavor. There's no casters, and this Alchemist is our only source of elemental damage, our only source of healing besides medicine checks. And so in a pinch, I mean, he's gotten us out of a lot of really dire circumstances. So take the criticism for the class with a big grain of salt. I really do believe that this is a class that can fill any role. It's a great pinch hitter and a great way to fill pretty much any gap in your party composition, even if there's multiple gaps. So is it always the best option for a role? I would say almost never is it the best option for any given role. But the fact that they can versatilely adjust to changing situations and party needs makes them a very clutch addition, and they are a lot more than their numbers make it look like they are. So the pros. It is a great skill monkey. It's going to be passing knowledge checks very regularly. There are only 2 classes in the core book that focus on intelligence. The other one is wizard. So if you don't have a wizard in your party, an alchemist is going to have probably the most languages available. And unless you have a rogue, it's going to have the most skills that it's trained in. It's also going to be a tremendous crafter. And that doesn't just mean it's alchemy. Because of the way that crafting works in 5th edition, that means that your alchemist is most likely going to be able to keep your fighters and champions shields repaired, and any number of utility things like that. So in that way, they are a wonderful addition to a group. Additionally, with their functionally creating free potions every day, that means it means A, you're not going to be spending as much money on potions, which can become expensive very quickly. Because you're going to be able to hand a few out at the beginning of a fight. With the way that medicine checks and things like that work in 2nd edition, there's going to be plenty of options for out-of-combat healing, but only the Alchemist really has a great go-to option to hand healing to an ally that ally can pull the trigger on at any point throughout the day, even if the party's separated, and that's really cool. Finally, another big pro for the Alchemist is pretty reliable access to a wide variety of debuffs and persistent damage. while a lot of classes can get access to it, the rogue especially with debilitating strike, and of course spellcasters, almost all of them have to, in terms of the spellcasters, are going to have to know in advance what kind of debuffs they want to bring to the table. But again, because of the way the infused reagents and the quick alchemy works, just that ability to be versatile and clutch with both your damage types for weaknesses, as well as your debuffs and persistent damages, can really make for a very bad day for your bad guys. So the cons for the Alchemist. The first biggest one is that the Alchemist is the only class in the game that can't start with an 18 in its primary attack stat. So most spellcasters, their spell attacks are going to be, based on their highest stat. But the Alchemist, while their crafting is intelligence-based, throwing bombs and fighting in melee as a Trojan are not. So, you're going to be a little bit behind in terms of attack, and that is going to be exacerbated by the fact that you never get past expert in any of your attacks. This means that as an alchemist, you will probably be missing big bads a lot. The good news is you do have some sort of chip damage, in that even a missed target with a bomb is going to take some damage. And, so in that sense, maybe, but there's going to be a lot of situations where the best thing for you to do is going to be to try to buff an ally or yourself instead of being offensive, which, again, considering that 2 of the Alchemist subclasses right now are focused on offense, it can be a little unsatisfying, and it definitely feels like an odd choice. On that subject, in looking through, I realized, and I had not previously, the Alchemist is the only class in the core handbook that does not reach legendary status in anything besides skill checks. So that's definitely odd. I mean, you have legendary perception in rogues and rangers, you have legendary defense in monks and champions, legendary attacks in fighters, legendary fortitude saves in barbarians, and legendary spellcasting in all the spellcasters. So it's pretty weird. They're not even high in terms, they don't even have like a lot of master proficiencies to make up for it. I think it really is a testament to how versatile the class is, that it can still be viable without anything that it's the best at. But it certainly means that you're going to have a character that will very rarely be getting, or will not regularly be getting the highest numbers. And so if that's something that's important to you, this may not be the class for you. So overall, I'm coming down on the Alchemist as being possibly the weakest class in the book, but also definitely the most versatile. It's not going to shine a lot of times, especially in a varied party, but in a party that doesn't have full coverage, in the sense of it's missing, like a dedicated healer or dedicated caster, it can really do a great job filling those gaps. It's extremely versatile. The quick alchemy I keep coming back to, but the ability to, as soon as you find out something has a weakness to an element, to be able to throw together some options to hit that damage type, or cause a particular debuff, so that some other character's harebrained scheme can go off. It's a tremendous support class, and it's a very clutch Hail Mary sort of class. When it works, it really works, but it's just, like I said, it's not the most flashy. It's not the best in any one role. I do think it's, there's certain characters or certain players that would get a lot out of it. If you're looking to, if you're trying to do like an introduction to spellcasting, it can kind of give you that spellcaster feel. Managing a subsystem, sort of keeping back for the most part, and providing utility and different damage types to the party. And anybody that likes a support role, anybody that doesn't mind not being the big focal point superhero every combat. That doesn't mean you never will be. It just means that, whereas, like I said, other classes get legendary proficiency in things, and you do not. So very rarely will you be rolling the highest on checks. But with all those proficiencies in skills and knowledges and things, you will not feel useless. So, yeah, that's pretty much the Alchemist. It's the switch hitter of the game, I think. It's very roguelike in that quality, and while not the strongest, it's definitely not to be just left on the shelf. Hopefully, the Advanced Player's Guide that's coming out in, I believe, still July. Could be June. I don't know. A recent article came out, and so we haven't gotten clarification if it's going to be June. I would love it to be June, but we'll say for now July. When that comes out, I'm hoping to see an additional subclass. I don't really know what that could be. Maybe a poisoner. It should be. It won't be. They've said no black powder in this book, but it should be. I would have loved something in the black powder vein. Something, I think you could have made a very unique sort of demolition man, maybe like based on traps versus bombs of the bomber sort of thing. You could also, have a poisoner, that kind of character. I don't know. Maybe we'll see something really weird that I can't even conceive. Either way, we'll certainly have a lot more feats to flesh out the class. Hopefully, things that feel a little more impactful than the minor buffs that dominate the feat list right now. And I'm certain that we're going to see loads more alchemical formulas. And that on its own is going to be a big boost to the class and its viability in more roles. The more options you have, especially, again, the way that you can tap into those options even if you didn't expect to that day, it's just going to be all the better for the Alchemist. So hopefully we'll see the Advanced Player's Guide add some more new interesting options, but definitely still good as it is. And Barbarian is up next. And then, like I said, we're going to go through them in alphabetical. We're going to try to, get these out. It's been a while since our last video, almost a month, I think now. But we were on vacation for a portion of that. But we will definitely try to move these out a little quicker. We're hoping every week, but we'll see how that goes. Wish us luck. And thanks. Welcome to the Collective.